we are coming off of a very interesting Week 5 game for the Aggies. Obviously, they played the Auburn Tigers on Saturday afternoon in a 2:30 slot, which, a lot of people, we talked about the last week that a lot of people had, kind of some mixed feelings about that based on the past matchups with the Tigers at that time. Auburn had pulled off a couple, wins in the past in Kyle Field, kind of random ones in those early afternoon games. But, this was a pretty sloppy game by most standards. Obviously, when you come off of the Notre Dame win, obviously scoring 41 points, it was a back and forth shootout. A&M's offense looked elite. I mean, Marcel Reed and Treads wide receiver Mario Craver were just on fire. And then you go into the bye week, they get some rest, guys get healthy. Outside of Scooby Williams, their senior linebacker, actually did not play in this game. Before we get into the details, though, let's just say A&M did win the game 16-10, and they gained one of the more underrated recruits in the 2027 class.
Way to start off the show kind of on a gloomy note.
But no, because sloppy can mean good or bad, and we'll get into the good. We're not going to focus on the bad. The bad will be the penalties, and we'll talk about that. But there's a lot of good to come, but we'll focus on 2027 3-star. I think some consider him a 4-star athlete, Hakeem Frampton, who you and I both knew was going to commit probably on that day. I was right out, especially after an A&M win. So, Ken, you want to kind of break down what A&M is getting in this young man? We do know he's a very versatile athlete who's played both sides of the ball, but most likely probably going to be a cornerback at the next level.
Yeah, definitely projects as a cornerback at the next level. He's a kid who is actually from the California area, even though he plays his high school ball in Little Rock, Arkansas. So we've seen the Aggies go into both of these states before and kind of pluck their talents. I mean, we saw Ashton Bethel Roman as a kid who the Aggies got late in the 2024 cycle from Arkansas. And then they have gone numerous times over to the West Coast for guys like current commit Brandon Arrington, who's a 5-star cornerback in the 2026 class. But this time they're thinking ahead, and they're getting a really he's a very shifty and dynamic player. Of course, he is still young, but he's going and progressing through his junior season right now. He has he flashes a lot, and that's exactly what we have seen the Aggies do time and time again with their recruiting. Is they take these kids who are these just naturally gifted athletes and kind of develop the athlete before the positional player, and they've been able to kind of I don't know what the right word, but more along the point is Hakeem Frampton just is a very, very dynamic athlete and very, very well as a cover man. So that's where we are projecting him to be for the Aggies.
Yeah, and again, we look back at going back to Jimbo Fisher. Obviously, he was, not everything is negative with Jimbo Fisher. Let's just say that, especially in the recruiting trail, he did a very good job, him and his staff, of identifying talent, not just looking at the 4- and 5-star guys and the guys who, a lot of scouting sites and places like 24/7 Sports rank these guys based on, future NFL potential, stuff like that. Obviously, we discussed that briefly with the Arch Manning class with some of the quarterbacks that are up there. That nothing against those guys, but you got guys like Malachi Nelson who are now on his 3rd school and stuff like that. We get wrong, we just get things wrong sometimes.
It happens all the time.
It happens all the time. So it's nothing against them. But you look back at guys like Anaya Smith, for example, obviously an historic player for Texas A&M, very beloved. I believe he's still a free agent, but his career at A&M defined kind of A&M's culture in a way under Fisher, which was a kind of a blue collar, hardworking mentality that has really accelerated under Mike Elko.
You also see like a guy like Albert Regis.
Yes, great example.
Who's currently on the A&M squad right now. I mean, he's gone through these progressions of working his way up and being a veteran leader now who has progressed very, very well in this Aggie program under 2 different stewardships.
Yeah. And so that 3, and I always say, Iowa State was a great example. Matt Campbell always said, I think it was Breece Hall, now obviously now in the NFL, one of the star running backs, we're a 3-star culture, we're a 5-star culture, 3-star players type of deal. And there is a real factor in that, is that a lot of these athletes who are 3-star recruits, it still means they can end up playing like 4 to 5 star prospects, because there are guys who are 1, 2-star recruits. That's a big difference than a 3-star recruit, in my opinion. A lot of those guys in the very low end, and we do have to remember Justin Jefferson, who would see probably
the perennial 3-star to 5-star,
2-star prospects. So sometimes that's also something that you kind of have to ignore in this process. Josh Allen was a 0-star recruit. He will tell you that all the time, and that's one of the. I mean, look, I understand how you kind of miss on Josh Allen. If you look back at his high school tape, he played at a very small school. There's not a lot of people watching him, and his arm talent developed during his time at Wyoming, so that makes sense. But with A&M specifically, instead of getting off into tangents, Frampton is one of those guys when you turn on the film, he has that elite speed. He has that versatility. He's somebody who Mike Elko and Jay Bateman would just love in this system, that they know that this could be an early riser, someone who's going to work their butts off right when they get here. I'm thinking of guys like Jamarian Morrow right now, who, yes, was a 4-star prospect, was still underrated, obviously flipping him from Missouri. He wasn't somebody who was getting, Alabama type of love and stuff like that. And he's already seen the field a couple times this season, is going to end up likely being a star for this program for the next couple of years. So that's the interesting thing about recruiting, is that you find out how good these guys are, not by looking at the stars, but by watching every bit of tape you can get your hands on, especially their final 2 years in high school, which if you go back and look at Frampton, like I said, that speed, that agility, someone who can play multiple positions and who just has elite work ethic. That's the reason why, you look at some of those 3-star guys in the past for A&M who have worked out, who have turned into stars. Auburn Regis is a great example of that. You talk about hard work. This is somebody who stayed the course, has not looked at the transfer portal, say, I'm not playing a lot, I'm going to go look at my other options. And again, guys who do that's fine. That's fine if you do that. But he never looked at it that way. He said, look, I'm probably going to have my shot to be a star, maybe in my final year, maybe my second to last year. Right now, we're going to get into it with A&M's elite defensive effort against Auburn, but he's one of the stars on this defense. He's what makes this defensive line go, and he's making everybody around him better. And so if you had missed on a guy like that, he'd be starring somewhere else. And that's why it's so good, because the 5-stars are nice. When you get the 5-star players, when you get the guys like Aaron Gregory, for example, who's most likely should be a 5-star by the end of this recruiting process, it's fantastic, right? You see future star potential. But when you get that 3-star guy, especially at a position like cornerback, I get excited personally. I'm like, I love those guys, because I can't wait to see how they're going to develop. Tyreek Chappelle, we're going to get into him later. Another guy who I believe is a 3-star recruit out of Philadelphia, has turned into a must for this defense. He talked about his injury today, for example. And again, we'll talk about that later in the show. But Mike Elko said early in the season, if we didn't have him in our secondary, we couldn't play man. We couldn't do what we want to do.
He's that
leading to these wins. Yeah.
Yeah, he is that important. I mean, you said it before, where you have to have instilled this 5-star culture rather than just getting all the flash with these 5-star recruits. So that when you do land the 5-star recruits, how well are they going to flourish if your culture is not up to the par of 5 stars, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Back to a lot of this is how the Big 12 has flourished in many, many years before, where you see teams like Kansas State, where you find all of these guys who are either overlooked by larger programs, but just develop all 4 years under an incredible system. And they just churn out prospects who are just willing to go the extra mile and just be, the best athlete they can be.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's like, be the best athlete I can be for this program. It's not about me. It's about our team. When you play team football, like we are seeing with A&M so far this season, there's no selfishness in that locker room one bit. You look at the wide receivers, you look at Mario Craver and Casey Concepcion on the same team. These guys will be the number 1 receiver on any team in the country right now. I almost guarantee that. Okay. And they're on the same team, and they're not looking after thinking, well, Casey had 100 yards. I only had 50. Well, Mario Craver had 100. I only had – no, they don't care. It's about wins.
It does not matter.
It's about helping this offense move forward. I love to see it. That's why this is honestly one of the most unselfish A&M teams I have covered personally through 4 games. And I'm not saying they're, last year's team was selfish or anything. I mean, there have been teams, especially college football teams in the past, where there are certain stars who expect to be fed on offense, who expect to, be that star pass rusher, who, are kind of thinking ahead to the NFL. That's not the case with A&M. It hasn't been the case with A&M for a very, very long time, maybe if ever. So, I mean, I would just say that this weekend, and we're going to now dip into it. We will mention a couple other recruits. I know you've got some updates and stuff like that. Albert Simeon's one of them, who got a prediction, one of the 4-star O-linemen in the 2027 class was predicted to land with A&M after his visit, which is a big deal. It's an elite O-lineman. This is somebody who Adam Cushing's probably salivating over, to be honest with you. But that just shows you that, and we're going to get into this now, that A&M's defense was, I mean, you'd have to agree with me, right? Probably the best defensive performance we've seen A&M put on since Mike Elko was defensive coordinator back in the day.
Yes, I believe that at least that's what it looked like. Yeah. I mean, let's put it where it is. Yeah. The big statement was not allowing a 3rd or 4th down convert.
0 for 13 on 3rd down.
0 for 13, and then I think 0 for 15 or 16 overall.
1 yard allowed in the 4th quarter. 177 yards total, only 52 rushing yards allowed. I mean, when you're watching that game, which was so funny to me. I mean, it was, if you're in the booth or you're watching this fan, you were too focused on the penalties, right? You weren't really, because A&M just kept stopping them every drive.
It was just kind of expected at that point. Halfway through the game, he was like, okay, well, they were going to let them have Here's their 3 plays.
Yeah. And we got to – so we can start with the defensive line. So this defensive line has been, I'd say, average to above average throughout the past 3 games. They really showed out against Notre Dame in the tackling department. Did a really good job of shutting down Jeremiah Love, Notre Dame's star running back. And I will just say this. The reason why A&M's win against Notre Dame is so significant – I hope you all saw what Notre Dame did to Arkansas and got Sam Pittman fired in the process. That team is probably going to win every remaining game at this point. A&M and Miami, who are considered 2 of the best teams in college football right now, are the only losses on the resume, and they were, by a combined 4 points, I think. So for those who aren't paying attention, Notre Dame is an elite team right now who could sneak into the college football playoff. That's what makes A&M's win in South Bend so significant. So keeping with the defensive line, they had a really good game.
Silence for Sam Pittman here.
Yeah, no, Sam Pittman, good guy, right? Hopefully, I think he gets back on his feet. No, I didn't cheer on the firing at all. I like Sam Pittman; he's a good dude. One of our fellow Aggie coverage guys, Tony Catalina, actually had a good post. He actually worked for Georgia's team, I think, a couple of years, many years ago. Knew Sam Pittman when he was the O-line coach there, said he couldn't have been nicer even when he saw him last, asking about his family and stuff like that. That's the man that Sam Pittman is, so just put that out there. Elite O-line coach. I think he'll get picked up by staff pretty soon. It's been very hard to be the head coach of Arkansas. And
it's tough. It's tough, man.
Very tough. And to be honest, maybe Petrino, I don't know if he's going to be the –
So we feel for you, Arkansas fans. As of right now, I know the broadcast did show a lot of the 4th quarter. There were a lot of empty seats. So we feel for you, but not as much as we feel for Auburn fans right now, because that was just –
Taylor was right, man.
If you're an Auburn fan, that's just not – I think it's safe to say as of right now, what it looks like is the Jackson Arnold experiment is probably over. Or it's a lost cause. We'll say.
So you've got Deuce Knight on your team.
You've got Ashton Daniels, who is
a good veteran. At this point, play one of them. I'm going to be honest. From a football perspective, A&M's not going to play Auburn again. Not going to happen. It's not. No. Game's over. We're going to move on from that. But just a side note, you got to make a change there. Because we were talking to Taylor of Auburn Wire last week. He said the same thing. If you lose this game, you're 3-2. You have a bye week. You host Georgia, who is coming off of a loss to Alabama. It could get dark soon. So if you to avoid the darkness, do something else at quarterback. Because I'll say this: Ashton Daniel and Deuce Knight, both a little more mobile in terms of making plays out of structure, I would think. Jackson Arnold's more of a downhill runner, right? You know, it kind of reminded me of like when Max Johnson was with A&M. That's kind of how he ran. It was that style, just like kind of a gazelle running, right? It was like long legs and then he'd slide. And look, he was making gains. They had a great game against Baylor. You know, they went on that streak. Obviously losing to Oklahoma, now getting just torched by A&M. Got to make a change there. Anyways, move on. It's an Auburn show, so we're not going to really spend a lot of time there. But so sticking with the defensive line, I think we both expected that they were going to have a good game here because Oklahoma registered 10 sacks against this O-line a week prior. And, you know, look, Oklahoma's defense is very good. They had been a little better than they've just been better statistically than A&M to start the season. But from start to finish, they were eating this O-line alive. Arnold did not have a chance outside of maybe, I guess, a handful of clean pockets. I can't even really think of a lot.
There were a couple of clean pockets that I remember seeing, and I do think Jackson Arnold was actually not holding the ball for as much as Auburn fans were giving him all the crap for in recent games. It's just there was nothing that was available to him that he thought would be the correct read. And that's a credit to Mike Elko calling what was a masterclass of a defense.
Oh, yeah.
That it was honestly incredible. And this was headlined by Torian York this past week. I believe he probably put on one of the best showings he's ever had for an A&M linebacker.
Go ahead. Yeah.
He has this incredible and innate ability to read things before they happen. He's a predictor. Yeah. I think back to many reporters. I can't reference a specific one because many people saw it out. Torian York identified a screen pass to a tight end before the tight end knew the ball was even coming out to him. That is incredible. That full stop. That is incredible.
At this stage, we all expect, and here's the thing. This is why Torian York is maybe the best linebacker right now. Outside of, look, he's sharing that with Anthony Hill. He's sharing that with a couple guys. But, and again, undersized, right? Undersized. Not looked at as like, oh, first-round pick. Like, look at the size. Look, he's Micah Parsons. No. This is just a pure blue-collar, I'm going to study so much freaking film, I'm going to outplay you in every way linebacker. And that's why we all talk about Torian York the way we do. Didn't have the greatest game in coverage. Right? Was a liability in coverage against Notre Dame. Well, guess what he did? He said, screw that. We're not going to have a game like that again. That was one of the best games I have seen him play. He's been a starter since 2023 as a freshman. He's just getting better and better in terms of those, just that all the mental, right? I'm going to study the crap out of what Auburn does. We get what their offense is, right? It's throw the ball to Cam Coleman and Eric Singleton on the boundary, let them basically moss their corners because they're bigger and we think they're better, and just, and we can get into that. Coleman had 4 receptions for 18 yards. They shut him down completely. There were a lot of Auburn fans who said like he was just going to go off, and we made that joke about he was a former A&M commit and he was just going to have didn't have a day. Eric Singleton, I think, made 1 catch, and it should have probably been an interception at that point. I kind of look back at the film.
I think it was a 37-yard pass
on the boundary against Will Lee, and Lee Lee kind of looked like he had an interception there. Obviously, it was called a catch. That was pretty much the only explosive play outside of the Xavier Atkins interception.
Which I do want to say, Auburn, their defense played well enough for them to be in that game, even without the penalties. Like penalties are a part of that game. I do want to give credit to specifically Atkins because he had an incredible game for Auburn and was a very, very big gift for what they had on the field.
No, yeah. I mean, again, the defense played well. Like, Auburn is not a dead team. Like, they need to make it. They need to make a change of quarterback, most likely. They need to clean a lot of things up offensively in terms of, basically pretty much how their offense functions, right? They don't really know. They don't have an identity right now of who they are. I think they thought their identity was their wide receivers. But here's the thing. Notre Dame didn't have a ton of issues throwing the ball. They didn't have a ton of issues getting explosives through the air. We talked about their tight end Eli Raridan had a big day. I think he had 80 plus yards. So you have two of the best wide receivers. You couldn't scheme anything up. That's the biggest problem, right? Even though I give full credit to A&M's quarterback rotation, Willie had his best game after struggling the first two games. He actually talked about that today. That's what a veteran does, is you just recoup, you get it together, and you go to play. And he took on the challenge against two of the best wide receivers, still two of the best wide receivers in the country. Des Ricks was Des Ricks. Basically, nothing came past him. I mean, he was pretty much I think he had a handful of pass deflections. Nothing was going his way. I think he allowed maybe 2 catches in the game. Tyler Chappelle allowed, I think it was 1 catch for 10 yards in the slot. I mean, they shut everything down. And that's the thing. We talked about Chappelle's importance. When you have both those guys, when you have Lee and Chappelle playing at that level, basically shutting down any type of consistency for this team to find anything, because you would, Auburn tried those screens because they just needed something to get going. Obviously, that's not happening, right? Tornier shutting that down. That defense was pursuing the ball every time. It was an outlet pass. They couldn't get anything going, and it goes back to how it finished, right? It was 4th and 1. Didn't know why Auburn didn't run the ball in the fourth quarter. This was after Marcel Reed's interception, which was a high pass. Colin Klein got a little cute there. They should have run the ball. They should have killed clock. They should have hit a field goal. If they didn't get in the end zone, that pretty much would have ended the game. But stuff happens. I'm really not going to spend a lot of time on that because Colin Klein did not call a bad game. It was mainly the penalties that were the issue. But after that Xavier Atkins interception, which led to Arnold's touchdown, you thought, oh, maybe they have some momentum. Yeah, no. Got the ball back. I mean, A&M pretty much ran the clock, tried to run the clock out. I saw a lot of people just questioning, why are you running the ball here? Why? Because Elko trusted his defense completely. I mean, they were on communication channel probably saying, look, our defense is going to shut them down. I trust them to do this. We got this much time left. Arnold hasn't done anything all day. Again, 4th and 1, standing like a statue in the pocket. Nothing is open. Gets sacked by Deion Hayes. Just gets crushed by a 3-man pass rush. Or it was a 4-man pass rush. 3 guys got home. Game over. And I'm kind of sitting there. I'm like, I mean, that's probably the greatest defensive effort I have seen in years from this team. And this is something that personally, and I don't know if you're going to agree with me, can really go towards A&M reaching my prediction that they're going to be undefeated by the time they enter Baton Rouge to face LSU.
I originally didn't agree with you just because I think there was probably one game, whether it was and this was all preseason, whether it was a Florida game, who we didn't know what Florida was going to be before the season started, or Notre Dame. Now, we still do have the Aggies taking on Florida up next week. So we will see them coming off a game against the Longhorns, who are going into Florida for the first time. So it'll be a very, very good thing to see this next week, what they put up against them. But now they definitely do have a chance to be undefeated going into Baton Rouge.